Before we run today's episode, I have a really special announcement. This is for you if your body has been calling for a reset and you have Machu Picchu on your bucket list. Jen and I are taking a small group of women to Peru, to the Sacred Valley, for 9 days of deep rest, reconnection, and remembering who you are beneath all the noise and busyness of day-to-day life. It's called the Midlife Red Tent Retreat, and it is not your standard yoga retreat or a tourist trip. We're thinking of it as more of a pilgrimage. Yes, we're going to explore Machu Picchu, and we're going to soak in all the wisdom of the Andes people and the Sacred Valley, and we're going to immerse ourselves in the peaceful luxury of Wilcatica, which is a world-renowned retreat sanctuary in the middle of the valley. You're going to come home rested, restored, and reconnected, not just inspired, but changed. And you're going to have all the tools to stay that way even after you get home. So if your spirit has been nudging you, telling you it's time for you, time for something that restores your energy, your body, and maybe even your sense of wonder, this just might be your invitation. We're keeping it intimate, just 10 women, and a couple of those spots are already filled. You can find all the details if you want to join us at midliferisingwomen.com/Peru. Welcome. This is the Midlife Rising podcast. About 80% of midlife women in Western cultures are struggling with menopause symptoms, and not just with the physical ones like hot flashes and sleep issues, but also with the emotional and spiritual symptoms of menopause. And most of us are using at least one, if not more, coping strategies to get through it. And here's the problem. These coping strategies used to keep us feel safe and in control, and they're not working anymore. In fact, they actually make things worse. Today, Sherry and I are talking about one of the most common and sneakiest of those strategies, perfectionism. So even if you think you're not a perfectionist, stay with us. I didn't think I was a perfectionist at first either. And if you have ever felt like you have to get everything right, or you pride yourself in your high standards, or you feel like you have to earn your value through doing and achieving, then this episode is for you. We are unpacking what perfectionism really is and what it's protecting, and why it seems to ramp up in midlife, or why it becomes a bigger problem in midlife, and how it blocks the spiritual awakening that's trying to happen at this time. So if you're ready to see what might be hiding underneath this perfectionism mask, then keep on listening. You're a woman over 40 who spent your life being the one who holds it all together. But now your body's changing and your soul is done pretending everything is fine. Welcome to Midlife Rising. We're your hosts, Sherry and Jen, twin sisters and modern medicine women, here to help you rewire your stress response, balance your hormones, and reclaim your feminine power. Every episode is a rebellion against the rules you never agreed to and a return to yourself. Join us where midlife isn't a crisis, it's a catalyst. Okay, Jen, this is going to be a good one because I think there's probably a lot of people out there who were like us who don't believe they are perfectionists, because I didn't either.
Nope.
And then one day you said something to me that really made me think, oh, that's what perfectionism is. I am one.
What did I say?
Well, you know what? I always had thought about perfectionism in the workplace. And it was even I used to be an HR recruiter, and I used to ask my candidates all the time, what is your biggest weakness? And they would always answer, at least the ones who weren't really well prepared, like the young ones, the newbies, would always say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. And
trying to impress kind of with the weakness, with the trying not to have any weaknesses.
Yeah, like it's a weakness, but it's a strength. Like it's a hidden strength, even though you're saying it's a weakness. And it actually is a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's a coping strategy.
Mm.
And you said something about how it shows up at home. And that's when I thought, oh, I do that. I just didn't think I was a perfectionist because I wasn't really one at work.
And now that I actually look at my behaviors at work, I am also one there. I just didn't understand what the signs really were. So
Okay.
I think this is going to be good. I think people this is important for people to really, really dive into what this is.
So I used to pride myself in my high standards, and I didn't realize that that was perfectionism. I didn't think I was a perfectionist because we're not detail people.
No, and I cut corners.
Yeah, we're not like, I don't like details. I don't focus on details. I'm a strategy person. I like the bigger picture. I like to know why everything's happening. So I was like, I'm not a perfectionist. And we both did really well in school, but we didn't get 90s, except in a few subjects.
Well, and as I said before, I cut corners and I leave things sort of undone. Like, I will always leave one dish in the sink. It's such a habit, like that one dish that needs soaking or whatever. Like I leave it. And I've changed that. I no longer do that because I was driving myself crazy. But I looked at that behavior and went, well, I'm obviously not a perfectionist if I'm willing to leave the kitchen like not perfect at the end of the night,
Right. So when I said to you, Cher, whatever I said about being a perfectionist at home, what is it that you do that helped you identify that you are one?
Oh, it's when we're having guests over. So what I used to do was run around all day long, just trying to make the house look perfect. And really we're going to get into this, but I was so worried about what people were going to think of my house and my cooking and the way the table looked and all the things. So right up until people arrived, I would be, changing the towel in the bathroom and wiping something off the floor and lighting candles and just trying to make it perfect.
So this is a sign that you're a perfectionist. You know what I do, Cher, sometimes? Where I've caught myself doing is like wiping the cupboards. Like the outside of the cupboards, as if somebody who's visiting my house is going to see that.
Or notice. Yeah.
Or notice.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend who used to say, if there's no toothpaste in your sink, nobody notices. And over the years, I have been unable to listen to her advice. That was advice I got when I was 25 years old. And now it's definitely easier for me to host. I still do have a little bit of that perfectionism that shows up when I'm having company. But at the same time, I've let a lot of it go.
And really that's because we've both begun to let go of the reasons why we perfect. What are the underlying beliefs that drive that? And that's the most important part. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to stop perfecting. That doesn't work. Like I tried that. Okay, I'm just going to stop doing all these things. And you cannot, it's the same with people pleasing. We talked about this last week. You can't just will yourself to stop. It doesn't work.
So when I think of some of the big signs that you might not be aware of if you're a people pleaser, if you're a perfectionist, is you probably think of it as high standards, especially at work. Like you might pride yourself even in your high standards and your quality of work and your excellence. So I was going through this with one of our clients last week, and she keeps saying, yeah, but it's my brand. Like this is my reputation. I have to get it right. And one of the stories I love telling is about this woman I used to work with. She was a client of mine, and I used to write the annual report for their company. And this annual report was impossible to write because she was a perfectionist. We'd finish a draft thinking, to our own high standards, to what we thought was a good report and would be perfectly fine with any other client. And nothing was good enough for her. We would get up to 37 drafts of this report. She was fired by 3 different design agencies because they refused to work with her anymore. She was constantly shouting at us because we couldn't get it right. And we couldn't figure out what she wanted because it was some arbitrary high standard that she had in her mind, but she didn't even have it in her mind. She didn't really know what she wanted until she saw it. Then what happened was it created so much more work for all of us. We had to budget in that extra time. Like we got smart after a while and budgeted in twice as much time to write their report as we did for other companies. So they were paying more. And then we were late every year. So she would have to go to the Securities Commission and request to file the annual results late. So that was more work for her.
Those are some pretty big consequences.
They are. If you think about work and how your high standards can sometimes play out, they were huge. And she was working 18-hour days and she was a monster. Like she was awful to work with. And I was actually kind of friends with her. Like when we were one-on-one or outside of work, like I liked her. But holy smokes, there were some times when she was so wound up and stressed out that she was awful to everybody.
So, okay, we're kind of getting into consequences here. Let's talk more about the signs, because I think we really need to get into this a little deeper on the signs that you are a perfectionist.
Yeah. So procrastinating is a sign. If you procrastinate on emails, writing anything, presentations, that's a sign that you're a perfectionist. And it's usually because, at least for me, it was that I wanted I couldn't get the first sentence out because I wanted the first sentence to be right.
This also showed up at home for me. It is right now where I have trouble putting pictures on the wall.
Oh,
so we moved into a new house and the pictures are still there on the floor because I want it to be perfect the first time. Like I want them to all be laid out on the wall, if it's a gallery wall, or even if it's not, like I want the perfect pictures and I want them to be, or art or whatever it is that I'm hanging. I want it to be perfect at the right height. I don't want to have more than one nail on the wall. And so I just don't do it. I stop. It's the same with my garden. I had an empty garden for the longest time when we
because you didn't know what to put in it.
I didn't know where to start. And a garden, oh my gosh, like you can move stuff around in a garden, but I wanted it to be perfect. So I procrastinated. I never started.
I'm just thinking about that because those are ways that I hadn't even thought about before.
This is one that shows up a lot for me. And I really have noticed it over the last couple of years because we moved.
Right.
3 times.
So you're starting, yes, you're starting over. Huh. Okay. So some other signs, Cher, are like one client calls herself the triple checker. So you check emails, you check for spelling. Oh, and then I said, if you have a spelling mistake in your board presentation, so she's an executive. If you have a spelling mistake in your board presentation, it is actually not going to matter. Like I would argue that if your content is really good, if there's a spelling mistake, nobody on the board cares, even if they're board members and they're high ups or executives, they're not going to care. And she's like, oh, I would die.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't stand the thought of making that tiny error. And I'm thinking back, I know tons of executives who had spelling mistakes in their presentations. I've seen TED Talks that have millions of views that had a spelling mistake.
I just had another story. We would work with these massive, 80 slide presentations. And somewhere along the way, somebody would change the font or the page number would be missing or some little thing that we didn't notice. Nobody else is going to notice. And we had to go through everyone and make sure that we had exactly the same colors, font, the page numbers were there. It wasn't just about the spelling mistake because those are kind of glaring for someone who's looking at it for the first time, but colors and fonts and, making sure that those are consistent from slide to slide. And it took us this was the one that I'm thinking about was an 80-page slide presentation. And it took us forever. We spent so much time on that. And I just thought, what a waste of time.
People don't care the more important thing is to get the content right. So those kinds of things The last one I wanted to just mention is like at home. Things like I watch it with my fellow moms all the time. You got to make the cupcakes from scratch instead of just going and buying them. Or there's one mom that had laminated birthday cards, birthday invitations to her kid's birthday party. And I was going, and then there's another mom who sends out a text message. It's my kid's birthday party next weekend. Can you make it? Here's the time and place, whatever. Like, it's just so much simpler. So think about how this might apply to your life.
So what's beneath this behavior? What's actually happening?
There are fears underneath it of consequences. So that'll be the first thing that everybody says. Well, I do it because of the consequences.
Well, and we already talked about like some of the consequences of being a perfectionist. And there's also consequences of not being a perfectionist. Like, and then there's consequences to being a perfectionist.
The first thing that comes up is, well, I have to do it right. Or there's consequences. Like embarrassment. I could lose my job. My boss could get mad at me. The executives might think I'm incapable. At home, it could be, my guests will think I'm messy or dirty, or the other moms won't think I'm a good enough mom. I didn't please my kid by making them the perfect imitation. So there's the fear of real or perceived consequences.
What I noticed about what you just said, Jen, is that a lot of that has to do with appearances. How do I appear? Are people going to judge me? So those fears are actually not, I don't really care if there's toothpaste in the sink. It's what is everybody else going to think of me?
Hold that thought. I'm going to come back to that. It comes from fear. Sometimes we don't even realize what that fear is. Like, we have to peel away layers. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen if you make a mistake on your board presentation? Usually it's not like, I'm going to lose my job. It's not the surface fear. It's the embarrassment. It's like, I don't want to be embarrassed. So we're avoiding perceived judgment, because that actually in many cases wouldn't be embarrassing. So it's our own embarrassment. It's our own response that's not necessarily reflecting the actual judgment of the people looking at your thing, house, presentation, whatever it is.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about that because quite often when we perceive that someone else is judging us, we're also judging ourselves, and we're probably judging them. Like, if you believe that someone is going to judge you because you made a mistake in your presentation, are you also judging other people for making mistakes in theirs? And how are you judging yourself for making that error?
If you beat yourself up for making a mistake, you're judging yourself for making the mistake.
Even though nobody else, like, it's perceived, because there could be nobody else who even cares.
Totally. So then the next layer of it then is the fear of actually, like, the fear of being judged is also just this fear of feeling the emotions that could come up. Like, we really don't like, as humans, feeling shame.
Shame and embarrassment, which are actually two different things, but neither of those are very comfortable.
So our client who when I was telling her this story and she said, oh God, I would die if I had a spelling error in my presentation. She's not actually afraid of the board's reaction.
She's afraid of the feeling.
Yeah. She's afraid of the feeling. We're trying to avoid things like criticism or perceived consequences, but in reality, we're trying to avoid feeling what we think of as negative or uncomfortable emotions.
That's the stuff that really, when you started talking about this is actually avoiding uncomfortable feelings, that really got me thinking. Like, that was a real mind-blowing moment. Like, when you really start to think about that.
It is kind of mind-blowing when you first start thinking about it. Like, you're just trying to keep yourself safe. And that's what our brains do. And I will say this probably a billion times on this podcast. Our brains want to keep us safe from a threat, perceived negative emotions. And these are coping strategies that we have developed in childhood to help us with those things. So children often become perfectionists over time because they want to avoid punishment. Certainly what we did. If, okay, mom would get mad and she'd say, okay, you're getting a spanking when dad gets home. And then I would try to be perfect. Maybe she'll change her mind. So if I'm perfect enough, then she'll change her mind and we won't get spanked when dad gets home. So it's our brains trying to keep us safe. And then it's our brains developed these coping strategies when we were children. And it wasn't necessarily to avoid a spanking, but it could be to avoid just your father saying, you know, when you come home with a 90%, where's the other 10%? Or shaming you for not getting a perfect mark, or feeling shame in front of your classmates because you made a mistake and they laughed. You know, there's billions of different ways. I keep saying that word billion today. There's so many different reasons that it could come up as a coping strategy.
You know, the other thing that I'm thinking about, Jen, is belonging and how this relates to that. And I don't have any research on this because this is just coming to me now. But I've really looked into belonging because of the way that women without kids don't feel like they belong. So I really did some digging into why belonging is so important for us. And I wonder whether there's a link there too, where if you say something wrong or you do something that's not perfect, or your house doesn't look like everybody else's, or it's not perfect by your standards or what you believe to be social standards, then maybe one of those fears is, well, people won't like me or they will judge me. And then there's the threat of I'll no longer be invited to the things, or I'll no longer be a part of the crowd. Or if I do get fired, then I'm no longer a part of this work environment that I like. So there's a deep rooted need to belong as well. And you'd never put perfectionism and belonging together like on the surface, but avoiding those feelings of judgment, like that fear of being judged or fear of what happens if I don't, if my house doesn't appear like everybody else's, maybe I won't fit in anymore. And that's also a threat, like that we're hardwired to belong, to want to belong, because our ancestors would have, like, it was certain death if you didn't belong to a tribe.
Yeah. And you can look at that in a different way as well. And that is that we can perfect to try to get love. So if I'm perfect, then my parents will love me. Whichever parent, like, you can think back to the parent that you had to be something or do something to try to receive their love. Then one of those things might have been perfecting. If you felt that you had to be someone else
or had to be up to their standards to be loved.
Yeah. We use perfectionism to push down emotions. Like, we're trying to avoid emotions by perfecting. Like, we try to avoid criticism or shame or even sadness or other emotions. But we also use perfectionism to push down emotions. Because if we're busy perfecting and getting it all right, there isn't time to be still and silent and to actually feel our emotions. So if you think about it, when you get criticized at work, what do? You get busy. Like, I used to hate it. Like, if I missed my month, like, we used to do sales, I was in sales. So if I missed my numbers, if I missed my target, first thing I would do, and I would get so embarrassed if I missed my numbers, even though people did it all the time. The first thing I do, we'd leave the meeting and I would go work harder to make next month's numbers because I was trying to avoid that feeling of shame again because I didn't want to be criticized. Working harder, trying to perfect everything, make sure I don't make a mistake so that I didn't have to feel that emotion. But what I was doing was pushing it down so I didn't have to feel it. And then as we know, our emotions get bottled up and they eventually explode. So the more you perfect, the more you turn into the monster. That was my client.
Yeah, it causes, well, that's a good segue actually. Because one of the things we wanted to talk about was how this shows up in midlife and becomes more of a problem in midlife. And one of those things is the stress that it causes. Like when I'm running around trying to perfect my house before people come, I exhaust myself. Like I'm so tired by the time the guests arrive. And then when they arrive, I've been on my feet all day. And then I'm on my feet again because I'm serving them or I'm standing around, we're standing around the kitchen island having a drink and appetizers or whatever. And then I'm serving. And by the end of the night, I haven't even really enjoyed myself because I'm so tired and I'm just like, I'm kind of like, okay, it's time for you guys to go home now because I want to go to bed. And I'm stressed. Like I'm in a constant state of hyper arousal when I'm running around the house perfecting. I'm checking and I'm thinking, what else do I need to do? What else is on my list? I'm constantly like thinking about, okay, what else do I have to do? How many things do I have left on the list? How long is that going to take me? It's like even just thinking about it, I'm starting to hyperventilate because it's like I'm out of breath running around like a chicken with its head cut off.
And Cher, it's not just to your point, it's not just the busyness. It's not just that it creates more to do. Like triple checking creates more to do, right? It's not just that. It's the stress in your body because your brain is like, it's like a vicious cycle. Your brain is becoming hypervigilant to all the things that aren't perfect and aren't correct or aren't up to the high standard. So your brain is constantly looking for those things, thinking there's a threat out there. And when your brain thinks there's a threat out there and is looking for threats, it's as if you're out in the wilderness by yourself, waiting for a bear to show up. So it's you're on high alert, and that is a stressful state. Your brain is telling your adrenals to release cortisol. Because then that becomes that vicious circle of then you can't think straight. And you do end up kind of running around like a chicken with its head cut off because you don't know where to go, what to do next. You're like spilling stuff, grabbing that from the stove, finding, or like even if it's at work, you're like, okay, what do I do next? You switch tasks, you try to figure out like, okay, what do I do next? What's the first thing? And you can't actually get focused on anything if you're in such a state of arousal and overwhelm.
I was just thinking about when you said your body's actually looking for a threat, and people use that all the time. Like we equate like your body thinks it's on high alert for the bear or the lion or whatever. And it's said so often that you just start to like wave it off and say, oh, it's not like that. And I was just thinking about it as you were talking because I've been in that situation just recently where the house that we moved into, it's a dirt road. There's all forest across the street. And there's not a lot of people around right now because it's fall. Most of the cottagers have gone home. And I have to take the dog out at night. Like now it's dark. Like it's dark at 8:00 or 9 when I want to take Parker out for his last like pee. And so there's no streetlights. If there's no moon, it is dark. And I was doing this the other day, taking him out and like trying to keep him in the driveway because I don't really want to go down the road because my body I did start looking around going, because there's coyotes. It's scary because I don't know what's in the forest and I hear things and my body actually is in, like, I was thinking about how my body feels in that state. And it is the same as I feel when I'm running around the house
with not really a threat.
Right. My nervous system is wired up. I'm looking around for all the things I need to do. I'm like in this hyper aroused state.
And that is what so many women unknowingly operate in all day. I had no idea for years that I was just operating that way. I just knew that every day I had a headache at the end of the day. I felt I had like pressure in my eyes. I was exhausted. I didn't want to talk anymore. I'd wake up not refreshed. I was lying awake in the middle of the night. I'd sleep for 5 hours and then wake up and couldn't go back to sleep. And I knew it was because I was stressed. I didn't realize how much I was causing it. And I also, like the foggy brain, and I want to get into the menopause symptoms and how this all relates. Like, I couldn't think straight all the time at work. The headaches that I would finish every day with headaches. And I just thought it was from staring at my computer screen all day. And today I still stare at my computer screen all day because we work mostly online and I don't get headaches. If I do get a headache and it's behind my eyes, I know I was working in stress mode all day.
Someone said that to me recently, that a lot of us are sitting at our desks in a heightened, anxious, stressed out state, and we don't even realize it.
Yeah, actually, I used to look at my desk, and because for 3 years in our past house, I had to work from my bedroom because we didn't have enough space in the house for me to have an office. And I was I would clean it off at night and try to cover it up. But in the morning, I would look at my desk and think about how I had to go sit there, and my heart rate would go up.
Yeah, that's a great way to start your day.
I know, and so this is like coming back to how we cause this for ourselves. I was kind of imprisoning myself there.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't allowing myself to take breaks when I needed them. I had myself on this regimented thing. Like, I can take lunch at 1:00 and I'm not going to take a break until then. And I was trying to get more done that way because somebody told me, like my supervisor when I was doing my PhD used to have a timer set. And he'd say, I can do this for this long. And then I have to teach a class and then I have to do this. And he was like, his day was planned out that way. And which is perfectionism in itself, actually, because we need to allow our bodies, you talk about this all the time, Cher. We need to allow our bodies to rest when it needs it. So that could mean going to the bathroom when we need to, or just getting up and walking around for 5 minutes when we need to, when we know we need a break instead of pushing through.
Yeah. Going back to the cortisol and, one of the symptoms that showed up for me you talked about headaches. For me, it was the sleepless nights. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and that's how I knew that I was stressed. And I realized this pretty early on. I also will get stress dreams, and they're sort of like, it's not a real dream. It's kind of a feeling. And I'll wake up in the middle of the night or like be sort of half awake and have these feelings. It feels like a dream, but it's hard to explain. But I know that for me was related to stress. And, for our listeners who really want to dive into this connection between cortisol and the symptoms that you're feeling, we've talked about this multiple times. Go back to, I'll have to link up the episode in the show notes, but the episode where we really link up cortisol and blood sugar balance and insulin and how that all happens in midlife. Your state of stress or calm has a massive impact on how your body feels. And if you start to pay attention to when you have sleepless nights and what was your day like before that, and when you have hot flashes and when you have brain fog, like take a look at what happened. How did you feel the day before or during that day when you had those hot flashes? Because almost guaranteed you were likely in a heightened state of stress.
Yeah. And it's not just that you can't turn your brain off, like just on the sleeping stuff. It tends to be like we talk about waking up at 2 a.m. and lying there for hours, that's because we go to bed at 9 or 10. Like it's kind of a 4 or 5 hour window. I was talking to somebody recently who said she goes to bed at 12 and she wakes up at 5 and then she doesn't go back to bed. So she only gets 5 hours of sleep, like, because she can't fall back to sleep. And then of course, then it's time to wake up. So, it's not necessarily a 2 a.m. wake up. It's waking up early and you can't go back to sleep. So you get less and less sleep and then you can't function, during the day. And that's when you have to read sentences 3 times before they sink in.
I think it's about 5 hours after you go to bed. That seems to be like when that happens. Yeah. You wake up.
And what I wanted to say was that it's caused by the cortisol spikes, not just by your brain not wanting to turn off.
Yes. I don't think that's well known. I think women think that it's just like, I can't get my brain to turn off. I can't turn off my brain. It just keeps going through my to-do list. It's almost like it's backwards.
Well, because it's a feedback loop.
Yes. And the cortisol can sometimes cause that.
I was talking about that with, in one of our live calls in our program the other day, or in our membership, about how cortisol can wake you up in the middle of the night. And then it causes those dark thoughts. So even if you don't have necessarily like stressful thoughts, or you're not trying to solve a problem, or your mind isn't spinning, it might start to spin because there's cortisol in your system, and the cortisol tells your body to look for threats. So it's a vicious cycle. It's a feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why perfectionism, and to sum it up anyway, that's why perfectionism becomes so unbearable in midlife. Why this coping strategy that it served you in childhood maybe, and you thought it served you throughout your life, comes to a head in midlife because it interferes with your body so badly that your symptoms are just exacerbated.
Do we want to talk about the spiritual side of this?
Yeah, that's what we're always saying, is that unless you deal with the spiritual aspects of this, it's hard to get rid of the symptoms, the physical symptoms of menopause completely.
So I have my ideas, Jen. What would you say is kind of the deeper meaning or the invitation?
What perfectionism does to you is, and I used to call these the 6 masks of doing, because they keep you busy. And or the 6, the reason I called them a mask is because it pushes down emotions and it hides your true self. So if you're busy perfecting because of what everybody else thinks, and because you don't want to feel shame or embarrassment, and you want everything to be perfect, and you're putting up this facade, you are not allowing yourself to be authentic.
So to take that a step further, when you are hiding your true self and you are not being authentic, what you are doing is telling yourself that your true self, the one who leaves toothpaste in the sink on a regular basis, except when there's guests over, is not worthy. When you believe yourself, that authentic self, to be worthy of being seen or heard or known in the world, you will show your true self if you believe that true self is worthy. I just needed to say that again. And that, to me, is the spiritual aspect. If you're telling your soul, your true inner soul, that it's not allowed to be seen because people might not like it, then you're not tied into you're not tied into that, to your soul, to who you really are. And that to me is spirituality.
Absolutely. It cuts you off eventually from your soul, inner wisdom, true self, whatever you want to call it, because you're so busy. And this is why perfectionism is so tied in as well with people pleasing. You're so worried about what everyone else thinks, and you're so worried about getting everything perfect that you lose track of what you truly desire. So you no longer align with what your soul really wants, and you're trying to align yourself with what everybody else really wants, or what you think the world wants as perfection. And
Yeah. Or what the world expects of you.
yes, that's a better way to say it. And also then you can't access your true self. Like you can't access your inner wisdom. I think that's might be kind of abstract sometimes for people. So the way I like to think of it is that when I did lose all of that a few years ago, I felt depressed. I didn't want to work anymore because I wasn't inspired. Like I just wasn't even motivated to do work. And when I started reconnecting with what I really wanted and like the goals I had and my purpose, it doesn't matter what your job is. If you have purpose in that job or whatever you're trying to accomplish, then you feel inspired again. But if you're trying to just perfect, you don't even feel that motivation anymore. And that's why so many of our clients, they come to us initially and I ask them, why are you here? And they're like, I just want to feel alive again. I'm on autopilot.
They feel sort of flat.
So that's what it feels like when you're stuck in perfectionist mode, is you're on autopilot because you're just doing all of it because you don't even realize that you're doing it anymore.
Yeah. So you lose that connection with both inspiration, which I see as that like the spark, the motivation, the purpose. And then you also lose inspiration in spirit. And then you also lose touch with your own intuition, which is that inner wisdom, your gut feeling, whatever you want to call that. But it's that part of you that tells you what's right for you. Let's wrap this up, Jem, because our listeners are probably wondering, okay, so if I know I'm a perfectionist, or I'm displaying some of these qualities of a perfectionist, these signs, what do I do? And you know, as well as I do, that we always start with the awareness, which is what we're doing right here on the podcast. It's listen to the podcast, notice the signs, and then see how it applies in your life.
We always tell our clients to journal on it. Like I have them track every time you catch yourself perfecting something or triple checking or whatever, write it down. Because once you do that, you start to see the patterns. Like, oh, I am every time I'm afraid of missing my numbers at work or afraid of something at work. That's when I start to perfect.
And that's when we can really start to get into, okay, when you're doing that, you know, what are the emotions that you might be avoiding? What are these patterns? Where do they come from? How can we break them? How can we dismantle the beliefs that are driving these behaviors? And those are all the other steps that require far more time than a podcast to get into. So that's what you will find inside of our membership and our retreats. We do that work there. And so
we can link up in the show notes our, if you're interested in joining our monthly membership so that you can start to dig deeper into your midlife coping strategies. If you are just starting this work though, and you want to know what your midlife coping strategy is, there are 4 more of these. So there's 6 in total. We spoke about pleasing last week, and today we talked about perfecting, and there's 4 more. And if you want to know your coping strategy, take our quiz. It takes 2 minutes to do it, and that link will be in the show notes too.
Yeah, we can actually rhyme that off too. It's midlifewomenrising.com. No, is it .ca?
It's midlifewomenrising.com/quiz.
Okay, perfect. All right. So come back next week and we're going to be talking about overthinking, which is another one of these coping strategies. So come back and join us for that conversation.